Welcome to another edition of James Martell's Coffee Talk, where James, successful publisher, speaker, and author of Online Success for Non-Techies, talks frankly and openly with experts from within the internet marketing industry about strategies and techniques you can use to develop a successful online presence for your personal or corporate brand. Here's your host, James Martell.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's James Martell here. Welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk. Great to have everybody on the line. Arlene, I believe I have you on the line with me as well?
Yes, I'm here, James.
Wonderful. So it's a little bit of a different evening this evening. We're going to be talking about a concept that I think most people have probably really maybe heard me mention and talk about on the Buzz or maybe in some of the training materials, but really haven't had the chance to really flesh out this whole idea of taking a breakation to actually build your business faster. And it's a bit of an odd concept where, you know, if you want to work harder and you want to work faster, take a break. And it's something that we started doing, meaning Arlene and I, when we first got into the business, pretty much out of necessity, because with 4 kids and the pace of our life with the kids and what we were up to at the time, we had to get away from time to time. Otherwise, we were just going to pull our hair out because it was a bit of a busy time in our lives. So this whole idea of developing an online business, whether we're doing so to replace an income, earn a little bit of part-time income, or if we're just looking for the freedom that we're always desiring. I know when we got started, one of my main goals that I wanted to do, I figured if I could just make $100 a day, that, you know, I would be well on my way to internet success. To me, $3,000 a month at that point would replace my income. And it was a bit of a stretch for me thinking about it because I wasn't quite sure if I could do it, but I knew I could give it a good try, and I was going to look for a way to do so. This was before I'd found affiliate programs. Hadn't even heard of the concept yet, and I looked at a lot of the so-called internet opportunities that were online back in early 1999, if you can think. So there really wasn't a lot, but there was some. So I was actively involved in looking for them because my goal was to earn some more income because we just were not earning enough money to actually really have any type of lifestyle whatsoever. So when a buddy of mine wandered into my office and showed me this whole world of affiliate programs, and we decided to jump into it and make a good go of it. We worked really quite hard on it, although we were running another business at the time, and we didn't have a full-time, we weren't at it full-time by any means because we were so involved in our current business. I knew I could see that there was a possibility here that I could actually build myself a steady monthly income stream where I wasn't going to have to go to work every day just to make some money. So that's kind of where I was at when we got started, Arlene and I. And since that time, we've had the opportunity to build an amazing business, the freedom that we have, the ability to travel, and this whole idea of truly being able to set our own schedules where if, we want to take off. In fact, a good example is right now, Arlene and I are sitting up about 5 hours out of Vancouver in a little town called Barrier, British Columbia. And it's in the interior of BC, in the middle of nowhere, up by my parents' place. And we're actually helping my mother move down to the coast. So we're up here to do that. Middle of the week, it's a Wednesday evening for those maybe who are listening in the recording later. But the ability to just say, okay, we're going to take off, we're going to grab the kids, and up to Barrier we go. So back in the old days when we were running a regular business or we had jobs way back, that really wasn't too practical. But because of affiliate marketing and this ability to create information-rich websites that are going to produce revenue for us, whether we're working on them every day or not, is what really, really appealed to me when we got started. So I would assume that a lot of people that are listening also have that desire to, probably go at this full-time eventually, probably starting off part-time, a little bit apprehensive like we were when we get started. We weren't quite sure if this was the real deal or if this was going to be a long-term thing, or this whole internet thing back in 99 was very new and a lot of skeptics about. So if you're feeling that way, you're probably in the right place to have a good listen to some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. This whole concept of breakations, the ability to work hard and then play hard, that's what we want to talk about tonight, because I think there's some real practical advice here, and it's, if you employ it, you're going to be able to push your businesses ahead further. We're not going to get into the technical aspects of the business tonight. We're not going to talk about so much how to do things as far as building sites, but I think we're going to talk about something much more important, which is the why we're building these sites and why we're actually sitting behind our computer, sometimes for hours at a time, sometimes where we're wondering and worrying if we're doing it right, or if this really can provide a little supplemental retirement income, or if this can, pay for a vacation down to Disney World from time to time, or down to Disneyland, or whatever your dreams and goals are. I think that if you employ some of the strategies that we're going to talk about tonight, that you're going to not only be able to build yourself a successful affiliate marketing business, but you're also going to enjoy the lifestyle that goes with it. Because as nice as the money is, it's really not about the money. It's about what the money can do for us, and that is the freedom that it builds and the ability for us to, relax a little bit and not have to sweat it all the time. So before we jump into this, though, I'd like to bring Arlene on the line if I could. Arlene?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'd like to welcome you to the call. It's kind of an odd thing for the husband to be welcoming his wife into the call, and I know I had to coax you a little bit to get you on the line. So thank you so much for actually letting me twist your arm today.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
No, that's good. So, I know a lot of listeners, they know who you are, of course, because you've helped them with Support Desk, and we talk about you for years now on The Buzz. But why don't you take a minute or two and maybe think back to when we first got started, when I was working down in the basement by myself. You're probably wondering what I was doing on the computer for hours and hours. And kind of, give listeners a little bit of an insight to how you saw this business begin early on when we were when we lived in Abbotsford.
Well, I do remember you sitting in your office for hours and hours on end, but I didn't really know what you were doing. I knew that it was something kind of new, but I know that you kind of really enjoyed it, and I liked the checks that were starting to come in, but I wasn't really involved in the beginning at all. I really wasn't even that interested in becoming involved at the beginning.
If we think back to 1999, when we actually got started in the business, we were living in a house out in the Abbotsford area, which is about an hour out of Vancouver, up in the Fraser Valley, for those that don't know the area. And we lived in a little two-story house. My office was downstairs. Arlene had a little office downstairs in another room as well. But most of her time was actually being spent on one of our kids, our oldest son, Adam, who was having some serious health issues at the time. So as absorbed as I was in this new business and running the other business, Arlene was absorbed with our son, trying to get his health issues under control and settled so he could have a life as well. So things started to move along quite nicely, though, Arlene. So once we actually got this business off the ground, and then we moved out to the Abbotsford area, we moved from Abbotsford, and then as the checks, as you said, they were nice and they started to flow. We moved into the South Surrey area, or White Rock, which is right on the coast. And that's, I think, when you first finally got interested in the business. And this would have probably been 18 months, maybe 2 years after we got started. And I know it's interesting to a lot of people because we get a lot of emails at Support Desk, or we meet up with students at conferences, and they always say, I really would like to get my spouse involved. If my husband would just get behind me on this, or if I could get my wife involved. Why don't you tell the story of how you actually got started? Finally got interested in the business.
Okay, well, it was kind of a funny story because we just moved into this new house in South Surrey, and instead of having one living room, we now had two. And I found these beautiful, they're kind of like a dusty rose leather couches, like a leather couch and love seat, and I really wanted them. And so I went to James one day and said, James, I need $1,200 to buy this couch set that I found. And he's thinking to himself, well, we're just getting started and things are starting to go good. But he had a different plan, didn't you, James?
Well, my idea, I mean, $1,200. Anytime I could see some extra money aside back then, it was like, okay, $1,200. Exactly how many new articles could that buy me, or how could I apply that money to the business to, increase the monthly income? And you're right. Buying a new leather couch and love seat wasn't on my list.
Right. So then James said to me, well, I kind of was wanting to spend that $1,200 on articles. So he said, I'll make you a deal. You write me the articles that I need, and I'll give you the $1,200 that you need for the couches. That's what we did, and I can't remember how many articles it was, but it was around 500 or something. I remember writing articles on satellite TV, cell phones, and all
I don't think it was that many. It wasn't 500 articles. No.
Long distance. It was crazy. I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, you know what? I was actually a good writer. I've always enjoyed writing. And so it wasn't a huge stretch for me to write, but it was something that I learned quite quickly and I picked up quite quickly. And I did it. I got all those articles done for you, and I got my leather couches, and I was pumped.
That's right.
And from then on, I thought, you know what? If I can just help James in this business, boy, we could just launch this thing a little bit faster than we are. Put our goals down a little faster.
That's right. And by that time, we were already earning a very substantial monthly income. But one of the things that Arlene and I have found over the years that is if you can get a good husband and wife team together, focused, working together, you can, unfortunately, to the single people, you can usually outproduce them by about 5 times. So for those that have spouses that are not maybe quite on side, I would suggest that you continue to encourage them to get involved because it makes the business a lot more fun. And especially when it comes to this concept of breakations. And let me kind of give everybody a little bit of a flavor for it, but you're the pro at getting this organized, Arlene, because you're the one that's always arranging the trips, arranging the airfare, or if we're, heading off in the minivan or whatever we're doing, you're always the one setting it up. But for those that may not understand the concept of breakations, the idea here is it's one thing to work hard, but if you're not rewarding yourself and playing hard, well then, it's kind of gets to be a little bit boring after a while. So we always have a little trip planned where we're going to be heading off somewhere once we get, a certain level of work done, and we kind of coined the phrase breakation. It's a cross between a break, which might be the afternoon off, and a vacation. So we're not talking a 2-week thing. A breakation spelled, and we even have a correct spelling for it. It's the word break, dash, and then A-T-I-O-N-S, break-ation. So once you work hard and then you take this little break, and we've done, dozens and dozens of breakations over the years, and we find that it really, really is a good strategy to move your business forward for probably a number of reasons, but one of them is something that we call the get-out-of-town blitz. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but if you're ever about to head off on a vacation and you're leaving next Friday, something superhuman kicks into gear because you've got all these things you got to get finished before you head out the door, and you have to get them done, but they're fun to do. It's easy to do. It seems to just happen off, there's no, it's a lot less, seems a lot less painful because you're going to be rewarded on Friday because you're heading to the airport to fly off to some exotic place or heading out the door somewhere. So, Arlene, why don't you give a little bit of a tip on this whole idea of, the collapsing of the time frames and the breakation idea? When
we have to head out of town, we have this big grease board that we keep handy, and we just start writing stuff down that we need to get done before we go, and we get them done. We really do collapse time frames and we probably get 2 weeks worth of work done in 1 week because we know we're going away.
At least.
And we just get organized so that when we are away, we are able to still check our emails and keep up with whatever we need to, a few hours a day. But it's great to have that grease board there where you can write it all down and just check it all off as you get it done. And it feels so good. Put that check mark beside it once the task is done.
It kind of reminds me of back in our construction days. You probably remember this, Arlene. When I was in the construction business, we would have a deadline where we would be working on a leasehold improvement or some type of a construction project that was a deadline. And these deadlines are not usually easily missed. And if they are, there's usually fines and penalties that go to the contractor. So anything it takes to get that thing done usually is what it takes to get it done. And I remember one instance in specific. I was working on 3 stores in one of the major malls here in Burnaby, where the deadline for opening, the grand opening, was at 12 noon on a Saturday. And if you were to walk into that mall at Wednesday night at midnight or Thursday night at midnight, you would have bet the farm that there is no way that mall would be ready to be opened on Saturday morning at noon. And like I've seen happen so many times in the construction business, Saturday morning, 12 noon, lunchtime comes around, and the mall is spotless, everything's in its place, everything is finished, and the grand opening occurs. There may be the odd little store that's got a little piece of plywood over or something, but generally speaking, for all intents and purposes, that place is done. And that's the power of a deadline, but that's also the power of taking a breakation, because if you handle your holidays in such a way, and I know I work with Phil, and I've worked with a number of people that follow exactly the same plan. Because we're busy running the business, the second we know we have a trip to head out of town, there's always a checklist that has to get put in place. Okay, before I go ahead, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. And Arlene and I, we've used this strategy for years and years now to build our affiliate business, because anytime we're heading out of town, which is usually about every 6 to 8 weeks on a breakation, we always have the checklist, and it's amazing. All the stuff that we were not getting done, articles being written, or we're behind on this little project, we're working on that and it's not quite done. We know before we go out of town, it has to be finished, and it goes on the whiteboard, and then it's done. Why don't you, Arlene, any of the breakations that we've done recently, why don't you talk about maybe some of the ones that we did last year, just to give people an idea that if they're working on their affiliate business and they want to set up, okay, and I'm going to work hard for 6 weeks, and then I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a breakation. I'm going to take my very first breakation, and maybe talk about some of the ones we did last year.
Okay. Well, we book little breakations and we book big breakations. So I'm going to talk about some of the little ones first. We love to get away, even if it's just for a weekend or 2 nights. You can feel like you've been gone for a week after just a few nights away from home. Just getting into a different environment, different atmosphere makes all the difference in the world. It clears your head, it refreshes your mind and your body, and you're able to get back at it full force when you do get back home. But one of the ones that comes to mind is when we went down to Seattle. We live about 3 hours north of Seattle, so it's easy for us to zip on the I-5, and we're there in 2.5 to 3 hours. And we'll go down to a Mariners game. So what we did this last time is we took Adam, our son Adam, and our daughter Victoria, and we took James's mom. And then James and I, we got in the minivan, went down to Seattle, and took in a Mariners game, which we love to do. And
that would be for those people that are out of town and maybe on other continents. That is a Major League ball team, Seattle Mariners.
Yep. But this time, instead of renting a hotel, I started looking around, and I rented a houseboat, which was very cool. This houseboat was right on Union Bay, and so we had a view of the entire city, of the Space Needle and everything, right from the water. And the kids got up in the morning and they went kayaking before we went out. And this houseboat was just so cool. I just remember laying in the bed, and it's just kind of rocking you to sleep, and just what a different experience that was. And
yeah,
we
that was
spent
a
couple
blast.
of nights.
That was an absolute blast.
Yeah, it was fun. And then we went to all the usual places, Pike Place Market, and then down to the waterfront. Just did all the things that we love to do in Seattle. And then we got on a little ferry and went over to an island. There's a bunch of little islands just off the mainland there. And when you look back, you can see the beautiful city from the other side. And, we knew we were in no rush to get home. So we just cruised around. We had a map. We knew where we were going. We knew how to get back. But we just took our time, and we stopped at all of these little towns. And we just had a great time. It was so much fun. We ended up in Port Townsend before we got home, and I know one of our students lives there. And we just loved Port Townsend. It was just a cool little place. Hopped on another ferry, and then we were back home again.
Remember in Port Townsend, though, remember that little hotel?
Yeah. They have an old Victorian hotel that's probably about 100 years old, and they've done it up and recreated it so you'd think that you were walking into a hotel in the 1900s. And it's just gorgeous. So we said when we go back to Port Townsend, that's where we're going to stay.
Yeah, so there's the idea for another breakation. So, and that's a good outline of what we did. We took in the Mariners game. We did all the tourist things in Seattle. Got on the little ferry, wandered away through all these little islands in the minivan. Hopped on another ferry to get back over to the mainland, and then we were home. And I think we were gone for 3 days, 2 nights, 3 days.
Yeah, that was it.
And you just swore we were gone for a week at least.
Right.
And we're ready to get back at her.
Yeah.
Any other ones come to mind?
Yeah, and then also last summer we got on a ferry and went to Seashelt, which is it's only about an hour and a half to get there from home. But you take another small ferry, which is a short ferry ride, but it feels like you're a long ways from home, and it's just the coolest little place. And I know we've got John Grayson with us, and he has a little cabin in Seashelt as well, so he knows what it's all about. But we rented a little A-frame way up in Half Moon Bay, which is just on the ocean, and that was great. This time we took our vehicle, and we also took the Cobra. So that was great because we had the Cobra to drive around in while we were there, and we had this beautiful little cabin on the ocean. And in the morning we went and we collected shells, we collected clams. We were sitting out there having breakfast, and we could see the orca whales out, the big killer whales out in the ocean, and it was absolutely breathtaking. It was so amazing. And because we were so close to home, we also invited a couple of friends to come up and spend a few nights with us. So it was fantastic. We had 2 sets of friends that came up, spent a couple of nights with us each, gave them a bit of a break. And, we brought our laptop so we could still do some work while we were up there. But, we just had a great time on that trip.
And we were so remote, in that case, there was no high-speed internet access. So this is something we usually do when we head out of town is we bring one of our laptops with us. And there's a lot of places you can get high-speed wireless, even in a little town like Seashell, which was a little bit of a challenge, but we ended up finding a little computer store right in the mall. And every day or every other day, we were up there for 7 days.
Yeah.
We would head into the mall, open the laptop, connect with wireless, and then do what we had to do online.
Yeah. But then I tell you, James, with that one, we said there's no phone, there's no TV, and there's no internet.
That's right.
And you know what? We didn't think we were going to survive at first, but we did, and it was so relaxing and so wonderful.
How about any others?
Yeah, and then right after that trip, we actually spent quite a bit of time last summer up in Whistler, and we had a condo up there for 2 weeks, and I spent the whole 2 weeks up there with Victoria and Adam, and we took our bikes up with us. And Whistler is one of the most beautiful communities in British Columbia. It's absolutely amazing. It's a huge ski resort, but in the summertime, there's still a ton of things to do there. There's lakes. We went swimming. We went biking. There's trails everywhere. There's this beautiful little village that's got the most amazing apples with chocolate sauce on them. We went up the gondola, up the ski lift, and then James just kept popping in and out. Again, it's only about 2 hours from home, I guess, James?
Yeah, about 2-hour drive.
Yeah, and so James would come out and spend a couple of days, and then he'd go back home, and then he'd come out again. And that was, again, it was just, those memories last a lifetime. The kids had such a blast there. They can't wait to go back.
It's the old, it's have laptop, will travel. And one of the things that we've both had the opportunity to see was many, many students of ours who are out traveling around the world with their laptops now. And we get emails from people who are, all over the place. And that's one of the things. The nice thing about a successful affiliate marketing business, you are no longer tied anywhere geographically. So I know people who live on lakes, who live out in cabins, who do all kinds of fun things because they can. So as long as you got access to an internet connection, preferably high speed, you're pretty much set to go, especially once you've got things set up, because once it's running, it's running. There's obviously maintenance, and if you want to take your income to another level, then there's another push on the work area to drive it to that level. But if you're at a place where you're at the $3,000 or $5,000 a month mark, which is really a good goal for those that are just getting started, if you're looking to a full-time income. One thing I'd like to encourage people to do is if you've got huge goals, that's great, but let's get the small ones first. Let's get that $3,000 a month happening. one of the things I learned early on is I couldn't really believe that I could actually make, $15, $20, $30, or $40,000 a month. It was something that would be nice, but there's no way I could even fathom it. But I could see that possibly I could make $3,000 to $5,000 a month. So my very first goal was $100 a day. And one of the things that I learned from a guy that taught me goal setting was you set your goals as far as you can see, and then when you hit them, you can set them further. So at that point, as far as I could see, it was $100 a day. So that was some good advice that I'd received from a mentor of mine. Now, this idea of, you've talked a little bit, Arlene, about the mini breakations, and, we've done more than we can count. But we've also done some major vacations, and we've organized it in such a way that we've been able to, write a lot of it off, that we've been able to travel to some pretty exotic places thanks to the business. And I think we should probably give some ideas. Let's talk a little bit about bookending the conferences. And then I would like you to share maybe your travel tips, because I know you're a master at getting the best deals on travel. So let's start with this whole concept of bookending the conferences, because I don't know if a lot of people probably haven't had a chance to think this one through, and it's a way that people can travel for a lot less money than they think. Plus, they can write off a good portion of the trip, and they can enjoy 5-star conferences or 5-star resorts, and get the learning that they can only get, by rubbing shoulders with other people who are successful in the business.
Yeah, and we do that all the time. And I love when they have a big conference somewhere, because we always book a trip around it. And I remember we took our kids out of school a couple years ago for 3 weeks. Oh, the teachers hated us. They say, you can't take your kids out of school for 3 weeks. I say, yes, we can. They're going to learn a lot more on this trip than they are in their class there.
That's
we
right.
do it all the time. Teachers don't like us. But we took them to, we drove, actually this trip, we took the minivan and we drove down the Oregon coast, and it's an amazing drive. Went and just stopped at all these little cities. Took a week to get down there. We had a blast, and took the kids on dune buggies on the sand dunes. Went through the California redwoods. Went to San Francisco, and then down to, of course, the trolley cars, because we have a son Adam who loves trains and all that kind of stuff. So we had fun there, and then down to Disneyland for. I can't remember. Did we spend 5 days at Disneyland that time?
I think we had a 5-day flex pass.
Yeah, 5-day flex pass.
My feet would still remember that. We did.
That was fun.
Yes.
And then right after that, we just drove right up to Santa Barbara and went to the CJU conference. And we had the kids with us. And at that particular conference, I didn't attend the conference. James was the only one there. But I took the kids down to the ocean every day. We went shopping on State Street. We went and did all the little touristy things. And then we'd go back to the hotel at night and meet up with James after dinner and go for a swim and stuff like that. So that was fantastic.
You know what? That was actually about 4 years ago, not 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah,
I
guess it was.
Time flies. That was CJU 2000, I think 2002 or 2003. And that was kind of the beginnings where we discovered this idea of, bookending a conference, where you have a conference that you want to go to, and you figure, okay, well, if we get there early and we stay late, in this case it was a little extreme because it was 3 weeks. Sometimes we do that still, but usually it's a little bit less than that. But you get the write-off, because now you can write off portion of the trip because you had to go there. So I know we've done this a number of times. There's another one that we did where we didn't take the kids, where you maybe want to share the New York to Halifax trip.
That was really fantastic. We'd never been to New York. I'd always wanted to go to New York, and here was the affiliate summit on a little cruise ship, just sailing from New York to Halifax. And it was just a 4-day trip. And we stayed in New York for, I think, 2 or 3 nights first, and did all the tacky tourist stuff. We just love New York, and we cannot wait to go back.
It was an absolute blast.
Yeah,
Remember, we took the double-decker bus. They cut the roofs off their double-decker buses in New York. We had a driver who thought he was driving a Ferrari.
Yeah.
In rush hour, a big double-decker bus.
We had a pastrami sandwich that was probably 9 inches high. I'm telling you, it was amazing.
Yeah. Wandered the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning in New York just as a couple. It was completely friendly and fun. It was an amazing city.
Yeah, and then even the little cruise was fun. Like, that was all business on the cruise, but there was still the internet cafe on the cruise ship, and you could still get your work done, which was great. And then our little trip to Halifax. Halifax is a beautiful little city. We'd never been there and really enjoyed it.
That's actually where I think you met up with Bronwyn the first time.
That's where we met with Bronwyn.
Absolutely.
That was a lot of fun.
And that's a great example of a way to bookend a conference, because if you got to fly to New York to take in the conference, you can write that off. You have to fly home, you can write that off. You can actually write off the conference and the time that you're staying in the whole hotel while you're taking in the conference. Now that you can write off anyways. And if you have a business or if you're running a job, if you look at the end of the year and you're paying income tax to the government, you can write that off if you were to spend it on your business. So it's basically a free trip to you. So then you take that and you add maybe 2 or 3 days to the beginning of that, which you have to pay for, and maybe a couple of days after that. So now you've taken one side where you've got a holiday, which is what we did, where we toured all of New York for, I think, 2 days. Then we hopped on the cruise, did the conference, then we landed back in New York, and then we spent another couple of days wandering the city and doing some more things in New York. So that's the whole concept of bookending, one of these conferences. And then if you look at it from a write-off point of view, you can pretty much write off a very good percentage of it. So at least you can in Canada, and I imagine in most places of the world it would be similar, so you probably want to talk to your accountant and stuff prior to that. But by doing a little bit of homework, you can figure out ways where you can travel and spend very little money. The CJU trip, for example, is a great example, because not only can you write it off, because it's a conference and it's organized by Commission Junction, in this case CJU it's called, it's held every year, usually September or October. You get conference rates to stay in a 5-star hotel. So instead of paying $450 US a night, you can actually get it for about $160. So there's a lot of benefits to bookending these conferences. Maybe one more quick one. Why don't you talk a little bit about what we did a couple years ago when we headed back to Florida?
Yeah. Well, we decided, as our kids are getting older now, Adam's almost 20 and Justin's almost 19, we needed to get a big family trip in, because, we knew that once the kids started leaving home, that was going to be it. We're going to have a hard time keeping everyone together. So we took a major trip. We decided to do a 10-day Caribbean cruise, but attached to that, because we were flying to Florida, we decided to do a week in Disney World first. So that was a really fun trip. We flew to Florida, drove up to Disney World, got to see it all. James and I had been to Disney World once before, but the kids had never been there, so they just loved it. And we spent about 5 days there, and then over to Kennedy Space Center and toured that whole area, showed them a lot of the different things there, and then back down to Fort Lauderdale and got on the cruise ship down to the Caribbean. And this was a really spectacular trip. I think some of the islands we went to were St. Thomas, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, and Marguerite. And at St. Vincent, they were actually filming the Pirates of the Caribbean 2 movie.
That's right.
And our son Adam, again, is a huge Pirates of the Caribbean Johnny Depp fan. And we took a taxi, and about 45 minutes into the...
way past anywhere we should have been.
Yeah, way into the kind of almost the jungle. And there it was, the whole movie set right there. And we could see the little dock that he came in on. And we were there just a few days before they started filming, so they were scurrying around and getting everything ready. And it was fantastic. All the big ships were there. And it was just the memories from that alone were just incredible.
And the whole time that we were gone, again, Arlene had the laptop in this case, and I think you were working on what you do in the business, which is usually deal with writers. And maybe you want to touch on that a little bit. So here we are, we're on a cruise ship. I'm actually working about an hour a day in a beautiful onboard internet cafe, logging in, checking my stats, and doing the stuff I do. But you're heading back to the hotel room as well, and you've got the laptop tied into the wireless system on board. And then
right.
What are you doing online?
So what I was doing was, of course, checking my customer service emails, getting back to people, and then also keeping in touch with the writers at Elance, and just making sure that our projects were still going, making sure the bids were being done and the writing was coming in and getting put on the sites and things like that. It was really easy to do. They didn't know that we weren't at home.
No, that's right. That's absolutely right. So let's talk a little bit about Arlene's travel tips, because I know you share them with me from time to time, and I know you've booked me on probably, 30 or 40 different airline flights, and a lot of times you're with me, sometimes I'm off on my own, and a lot of times it's all of us with the kids, so I know you've got good experience, and for those that, may not be versed in a lot of travel, you're probably going to really want to listen up to this, because she can save you a small fortune, and this stuff is very cool, because it's come through a lot of experience, and it's, one thing I find from talking with people that are not used to traveling, like when we got into this business, we were not used to going to the airport. Going to the airport was such a rarity that it was such a big thing. But nowadays, we're off all the time to the airport. So, but for those that are not used to doing that, but maybe would like to possibly get used to doing that, because it is a lot of fun, why don't you share some of the things that you've learned about saving money on airfare? Because it's one thing to make the money, but we don't want to pay it back. The idea with making money with affiliate programs is to keep as much of it as possible. So just because you make good money doesn't mean you need to want to spend it all. So we're always looking for deals on trips and travel and everything that we're doing. And Arlene's one of the thriftiest people I know. So
well, when you're traveling with 4 kids too, it gets a little expensive. So, anywhere that you can save a few dollars, it really makes sense. We probably spend twice as much as anybody else that's taking the same trip, only because we're dragging 4 kids behind us. So, you know what, I really do look for the deals. And a couple of the ways that I've done that is I subscribe to the travel email deals. So I get emails that pop into my inbox, and if I'm going to be traveling, then I'll open them. If I'm not traveling, then I just delete them. It just takes a minute. But there's a lot of travel deals that pop in, and they might be special airfares to Las Vegas, and we do travel to Las Vegas a lot.
So where would you sign up for these travel deals?
Let's see. From Las Vegas, they have like a little travel center there, and you just subscribe to it. It's like their hotel subscription, and so
in
that
Vegas?
When any of the hotels have a travel deal, it'll just come right into your inbox. So
is this on one of the websites?
The little desk, and you can subscribe to the travel deals right there.
So do you any idea how somebody would find? Is it a website address?
No, I don't have that right here in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can look that up for everyone. But it's just a little email deal that comes right in. So if the any of the hotels, so let's say Paris has a deal on, I'll get an email saying Paris has a special rate on. Or
I know the last time we went down to Vegas, you got a good deal.
Yeah. Are you talking about the Paris trip?
No, I think the last airfare that we took.
The last airfare, yeah. And again, that was through Allegiant Air, and again, it was one of these emails that just popped in. And I had gone to Allegiant Air and signed up for their travel deals because Allegiant Air is in Bellingham, and they're really close to us. So that was looking for an airport that was close to us, and an email popped into my inbox, and it said airfare to Las Vegas, $27 there, and it was $69 return.
Still amazes me.
It was just unbelievable because you could typically pay $300 to $400 each way to Vegas, depending on what time of the year that you're going. So when little travel deals like this pop in, and we're heading out, then we'll take advantage of them. They really are amazing. So that's one of the things I do.
Now, tell a little example of the Paris story, because this is something you do all the time.
Right.
That I know marveled me the first time. And I'm not the most bold guy when I wander up to the counter, so you may want to kind of flesh this out a little bit. But tell them the $20 trick that you've learned, or maybe where you've learned this.
Right. I bought a book called The Travel Detective, and this guy is amazing. He travels the world, and he tells you how to get little deals and little tips and little tricks for traveling. And it was the funnest book to read. I'm telling you, I had such a hoot with that book. And one of the little tricks that he put in there was when you book yourself into a hotel, what you do is you go up to the
I think you first booked this online, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Paris one, I actually got a deal. Now, Paris again is quite a nice hotel there. And I got
it's a beautiful 5-star hotel in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I got an internet deal where the room was $99 a night, so I had booked that online. And then when we got there, we got to the counter, and we went up to the lady, and she was checking us in, and we said, And one of the things that we learned was you give the person a $20 bill, and you say, do you have any upgrades available? And we've done this several times. And this woman said, oh, let me see what I've got.
No,
and
she said, oh, you mean for free?
Yeah. Yeah, she said, you mean for free? And we said, well, yeah. And she actually said, well, let me see what I've got. And she booked us into a room, and it was like a $600 a night suite. It was absolutely massive. It had this grand, like, ensuite with, was just the most amazing hotel room that I think I've ever stayed in. It was absolutely gorgeous. And she booked us in that for free.
Yeah, for a nice little $20 tip.
That was, so we gave her,
we've used this a lot. And it doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't.
Sometimes
always
it's not
work.
that extreme, but a lot of times, even Phil and I, we went down to Affiliate Summit last August in Disney World again, back to one of the hotels there. $20 comes out, and they didn't have any upgrades because all the rooms were identical. But for the $20 tip, he moved us from the back of the hotel to the front, moved us up a few floors, and now we had a beautiful view that we would not have had if we didn't do that.
And I think most people are just afraid to ask. But you know what? If it works 50% of the time and you get a nicer room, it's worth it. It's fantastic. So
and everybody loves to get a tip. So
yeah.
And that's all we're giving the clerk across the counter is a tip.
Right. So that works out really good. And so some of the other things I do is I like to book sometimes through Priceline. And Priceline is great because you actually fill in your own price. And we did this to our trip to Maui. We went for 10 days to Maui, and we took Victoria with us. And this is a 5-star hotel that is absolutely amazing. And we got 10 days at the Sheraton Maui for $1,600.
Yeah, it was regular $450 a night room. And that would be $4,500 US just for the 10 days by using Priceline. So these travel deals that we see online and we see on TV, with a little bit of work, they are actually the real deal.
Yeah, they really are, and we use them all the time. And if we ever have to fly out of Seattle or anything, and we need just to get a little hotel right by the airport, this is a great place. If you ever need a hotel by an airport, you can usually get your room for about $49 a night. And typically, if you were just to drive in there and ask for a room, they'd charge you about $120 to $150 a night. So
now, you have a little trick as to which night of the week is the best day to book
One of the things I also learned is that the airlines, they kind of go on a schedule, and Wednesday midnight is kind of when they rearrange their schedule and when their prices are at their very lowest. So if you were to go and you wanted to book a trip, go online just after midnight on Wednesday, and it'll be the least expensive that you're going to find the airfare for that company. And then as the week progresses, it gets more and more expensive. And I've tried this a few times and, looked at trips, and then I would wait 24 hours, look again, exact same flight, would be about $100 more, wait another 24 hours, look again, and it would have gone up another $100 after that. So, it was really a cool little tip that I learned there, and that I hadn't known that before.
What was the name of that book again?
The Travel Detective.
It was, I think, if I recall, it was a CBS reporter, a reporter for one of the major news networks that travels all over the world as a news reporter, and he just decided to write a book about all the things that he had learned on how to get deals with hotels and all kinds of things.
And he has particularly a lot of tips in there for the single traveler that really wants to travel cheap through Europe and stuff like that, too. It's just amazing, the little book with lots of tips in there.
One of the little tips I learned, it wasn't from that book, but it was quite a few years ago when I first started traveling, was tipping, which sounds like a crazy thing because we usually all tip, depending on the country you're in. But one thing that I've learned to do, and anytime I go into these hotels, the very first thing that I do is tip the concierge well. So if I hit down to Commission Junction University, I'm the first guy to tip the concierge $40 as I walk in the door, and which sounds like a lot of money, and they take your luggage and they get you settled in the hotel and everything. But I'll tell you what, it's the best $40 that I spend every year because we're treated like gold. It's amazing if you take care of the hotel staff, how they'll take care of you. And we've done this everywhere we go, anywhere that we repeat all the time, especially. And I can walk into CJ, into the Fest Parker Doubletree, which is a beautiful 5-star hotel that you'll go to if you decide to attend CJU in September. And first thing I do is I tip him $40, and out come the warm cookies. He's just amazing. Mr. Martell, take care of everything. Don't worry. And literally, we're off, and he books us in. Next thing we know, our luggage is in the room, and for the rest of the weekend, we're treated like royalty.
Yeah, so, it really does work. It really is amazing. Yeah, just give them a tip, and they're just there to help you. And you're going to get great service.
So I think that pretty much gives a pretty good rounding on this whole idea of breakations. Anything else come to mind that you'd like to share with listeners?
Well, one of the other things that I did learn, too, when we flew to Florida, I booked through American Airlines, and they have a little button on there. Once you book you kind of go through the itinerary, and you're looking at the dates and the times and everything that you want to do, they have another little button at the bottom that says, are you flexible with your schedule? And usually we are. So if you click on that, sometimes they'll send you on a flight that's like an hour earlier or an hour later, but the rate just drops. It's just amazing because it's a less popular flight for them, I guess, and they're trying to get the seats filled up. And these are not red-eye flights, but they dropped the prices. And we were able to get that flight to Florida. I'm pretty sure it was return, and there were 6 of us going, and it was $169 return from British Columbia, which was just phenomenal.
Absolute screaming deal.
And
if I recall,
you
showed me that button a few times. It's microscopic, so you really got to look for it. So they're not really heavily promoting it.
Yeah.
But I guess certain people know about it, and you can find it.
Yeah, and it just says flexible with your schedule, and then you can click on it, and it'll just give you a few other little options. And on that particular one, we even got a better flight than the first one that we had tried to get on. So that was great. And then the other place that I do check as well is iTravel 2000. I love that little internet service as well. I've always gotten really good customer service there, and we've never, ever, ever had an issue when we travel with iTravel 2000. And they have a deals link on there. So if you're, if you guys can just get away at the last minute, you can get a fantastic deal on travel from there as well.
That kind of reminds me of, one of the things and one of the benefits of building a successful affiliate marketing business and actually being able to say goodbye to the boss, if that's your goal, is that you're no longer tethered to the traditional holiday schedule that so many are, tethered to is a good word. Easter break, spring break, Christmas holiday season, summer holidays, where you're paying on-peak rates. And typically it's at least double. And you're competing with the travel, the volume of visitors. Everything's busier, everything's harder to get, everything costs more money because it's on season. Where if you've developed yourself a successful affiliate marketing business where you've got the freedom of time now and you can book your own schedule, in addition to everything else Arlene's talked about, you can now travel off-peak and get better service because there's not as many people there. You can get way cheaper rates because it's off-peak. And that not only off-peak for just the Maui, for example, hotels are less, airfare's less, but so are all the attractions that are there. Warren and Annabelle's Magic Show, which is on the beach, was a spectacular thing you got to see, or taking a helicopter ride, or heading out on the submarine, or going parasailing, which reminds me of your photo. You should probably mention that, which is a pretty cool thing. But This whole idea, once you have the freedom, I've always heard once you have money, you don't need as much. And it's actually true, and these are some of the reasons why, is because if you're working full-time, and the only time you can travel is during spring break, instantly you pay double what everybody else pays, because that's when the rates go up.
Yeah. And, the other thing, too, is if you're just traveling, like even in your own little state or province, check out some of the bed and breakfasts. There are some beautiful bed and breakfasts around, and we've always enjoyed staying in bed and breakfast. You always get a great breakfast. You get a friendly host, and you get a comfortable room, and we've stayed in some really, really nice ones, and we've always enjoyed that.
You know what you should do, Arlene? I think you should start a website called arlenestraveltips.com.
And how to get a fluffy bathrobe.
Tell that story. That's a riot. Another classic affiliate marketing story.
Yeah. Well, we were at CJU, and everyone was just kind of winding down the day, and a bunch of us girls got together, and we decided that we wanted to go have our own little wine and cheese party. So we went and got some wine, and we went and got some cheese and crackers, and then we had an idea. We said, you know what we need is some big, white, fluffy bathrobes. I wonder if the hotel has any. So we were all in one room. We dialed up the room service, and we said, do you guys have any big, white, fluffy bathrobes? And he goes, yep. And I said, he goes, how many do you need? We need 5. And he shipped them down to us right away. And we went into the hot tub and had our cheese and crackers and wine. And then after that, we decided to go see if we could find everybody. And they were all kind of just, still networking and standing around at the bar and stuff. And we had our big bathrobes on, and we walked into the bar with our bathrobes on, and everybody just cracked up. I thought that was so funny.
Oh yeah, we're still talking about that.
Yeah,
that was
absolutely a lot of fun.
A riot. So I want to thank you, Honey Buns, for sharing all your little tips and your little tricks. I know they work. I'm the beneficiary of so many of them, and I want to thank you for that publicly. You've shared some really cool stuff. For those that may be listening to a recording of this or out in their car and stuff, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you on the line. For those that are with us live right now, we're going to head over to the conference room and answer any questions. Arlene will be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding, travel tips and breakations and, the lifestyle, of an affiliate marketer once you've got your business off the ground and running, and just some of the fun things that you can do. For those that are maybe interested in learning more, you can visit the affiliateedge.net to learn more about everything we do, about training and tools and tips and the fun we have, and look forward to seeing you on the net. So for the rest of you that are live, we'll maybe hang up now, and we'll meet you in the conference room. Bye for now.
To learn more about James Martell, the School of Internet Marketing, and how you or someone on your staff can quickly and easily learn how to develop a successful online presence for your personal or corporate brand, visit theschoolofinternetmarketing.com. That's www.theschoolofinternetmarketing.com.